Hey everyone, it's Bennett, your fantasy football commissioner, with the playoff edition of the weekly recap for the Forest Land Mishmash Fantasy Football League. Well, as you can see by the close score, we had a barn burner of a playoff game. Not only was it close, we had a husband-wife situation. We had back and forth. We had, Graceland, the top scorer in the league, needed every bit of their last player in the Sunday night game to get their points to get the win. Pretty cool. I don't usually keep tabs on other games as closely as my game during the regular season, so I don't know for sure, but this has got to be one of the games of the year in all of fantasy football. Two highest scoring teams of the week battle it out in the playoffs, so you can't beat that. And so, if we look at the overall, we've got, the Patriots defense, who's been great all year for the Stallions. There's always only, one or two defenses that actually gets a lot of points given week versus just being solid. But as far as getting fantasy points, there's not too many that you can rely on. But this year, Patriots were amazing. They probably had 6 or 7 defensive touchdowns. So they get 19 points. Devontae Parker really coming on of late. Classic case of a crappy team, but you've got, Fitzmagic, who's a solid quarterback, maybe not a winner, but can get the ball down the field. And Devontae Parker, if this will load up, if you look at his game log, has really been solid. Look at this. I mean, he's got 21, 35, 23. Of course, he had one bad week in week 14. Still was able to help the Stallions get in the playoffs. So Devontae Parker's been great for the Stallions. Zach Ertz, come on. Zach Ertz has been just solid all year. As you know, the week before he had a touchdown with 2 minutes left to get into the playoffs. A bunch of other, solid players there. On the other side, what really almost blew it for Graceland was Baker Mayfield and Jarvis Landry. Started off Thursday night with 41 points from Lamar Jackson, who's been obviously fantasy MVP, followed closely by McCaffrey with his 36 points. So he did his job. Tyreek Hill had a touchdown in the snow. Allen Robinson also sort of like a Devontae Parker type of guy with, Trubisky for the Bears being really mediocre. But if you look at Allen Robinson the last, 4 or 5 weeks, in the 20s every week, he's been really consistent. And even all season has been solid in spite of having a crappy quarterback throwing to him in real life. Fournette, nothing much. He's had a good game in the past, but not this week. Not much from the Bears defense. But really, from Thursday night on, Graceland was projected at over 200 points, and the Stallions just kept hanging in there. And when it came to the afternoon games, I mean, Baker Mayfield just was terrible at Arizona and was really looking like the Stallions were going to overtake it. And and I have a little screen grab that I took, as of, about, end of the third, at halftime of the afternoon games, it was dead even. And the Stallions were actually projected to win at this point. They were up by 12. At this point, Baker Mayfield only had 6 points. Cooper Kupp, I think at that point, had 0. Oh, I don't think the screen grab got it, but that was, Cooper Kupp, there it is. He had 0. So with that much time, the Stallions, in spite of having 0 from Cooper Kupp, were in the lead. And Cooper Kupp actually, in garbage time in that game, ended up with 16 points. He had a late touchdown, meaningless touchdown in real life, but for fantasy implications. And so we ended the afternoon windows with Graceland down by 13 with John Brown left and needing 13 points from John Brown. And I did a little quick calculation of his game log, and I think it was 9 out of the previous 13 weeks he had not gotten 13 or more points. So obviously week 1 and 2 he did, but then he went on a stretch here. So he's been up and down all year, been very solid. Not expected to be, the number one guy, but for this game needed 13 points, and as you can see, 7 catches, 99 yards, and I believe the last one was was a 30 or 40-yard catch with about 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So it took until fourth quarter of the Sunday night game with one last player playing for Graceland to defeat her husband, the Stallions, 187-184. And what a great game. Graceland, by previous performance, definitely deserved the win, but great honorable mention for the Stallions for keeping it close. The other playoff game was actually pretty close too. It didn't look that close most of the time. Third and Oolong had a big lead, and of course, first down order had to wait till Monday night for Drew Brees and for Zach Pascal to play. Just solid all the way around. Obviously, Kittle's been a stud all year. DeAndre Hopkins solid, but not great. Joe Mixon pretty good. So definitely put up some numbers. And third and Oolong had a nice lead with Russell Wilson. The two quarterbacks, even Gurley, in spite of the blowout, had points. Miles Sanders, talk about, one of those guys that comes up late in the year. If you look at his game log, he's one of those guys, and you got to win a fantasy championship, you got to have one of those guys. I mean, look at this. Most of the year, just sort of an also-ran, but, 24 points week 8, and then starting really the last 2-3 weeks, 21 points, and his biggest game of the year just in time for the playoffs, because as you can see, with Drew Brees and his almost perfect night Monday night, had 33 fantasy points. Jared Cook had 9, so that was a big thing. Was first down order just needed Cook to get shut out, and he didn't. He got just enough. And so the last touchdown, and I think the last Zach Pascal catch, got first down order close to within 7, but couldn't quite get over the hump. And third and Oolong from the wild card defeats the last team in, defeats the number 1 seed first down order, and the Super Bowl is set. So let's take a look at, if I can get to that. How do I get to that? Let's see here. Let's see if I just hit the scoreboard screen. It should get to that. So let's preview this week's game, which is the 2019 Forest Land Mishmash Fantasy Football Super Bowl. Come on, Internet. Why is it always down? It's always down when I'm rating. Okay, here we go. Let's take a look at the matchup. So there was no game last night, Thursday. There's 3 games Saturday. So let's take a look to see if any of those 3 games tomorrow have any fantasy implications as we wait for the screen to load. It's been a fun year, I have to say. I'm still bummed that my team didn't make it. Had I played in third and Oolong, I think I would have won. I'd have to check. And of course, some podcast talked about, inevitably, all your fantasy players the week after you lose in the playoff will go off, and that's pretty much what happened. Saquon Barkley, who had nothing the previous game, had like 30 points and 2 touchdowns, and like all my guys scored points the week after I was knocked out. But look at this. Look at this. It is dead even going into the final week. Graceland has a slight edge in win probability, favored by 5. Obviously got to stick with Baker Mayfield. He's playing Sunday against the Ravens, so that, might be tough for them. But look at this. Wow, this is great. So battling QBs, Graceland's going to be watching that Ravens-Browns game, because every time, no matter who has the ball, she's got the quarterback playing in that game. So she wants high-scoring game there. You've got Carolina, or you got McCaffrey Sunday. So I'm looking for these Saturday games. John Brown Saturday against the Patriots defense. Jarvis Landry's questionable. Not sure. I'll let Graceland figure out whether he's going to play. And here's her other options. Obviously, she could sub somebody in for Landry. Going to stick with the Penn Stater, Gesicki from Miami for the tight end. He's been respectable as far as tight ends go. Then on the other side, big thing, of course, is whether Derrick Henry plays. He's questionable. See if Miles Sanders can repeat what he did last week. A lot of questionable marks over here. So third and Oolong will be watching the injury report closely, and we've got a really tight matchup to be on Sunday. And of course, in the consolation game for third place, we have First Down Order with a 55% win probability for third place, and everyone else is just sort of playing out the string. So it should be exciting. Glad I was able to get this before the weekend started. Congrats to our 2 Super Bowl competitors. Congrats to great all female, by the way. Just noticed that all female GM Super Bowl this year. And so good luck this weekend in football, and enjoy the last week of fantasy football. And as we head into the real end of the season for real life football, enjoy, guys. Have a happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, all that stuff. And hopefully I'll talk to you next week.